Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. As promised, we're in the shop today on this snowy day. Overnight, the rain that fell was falling through the atmosphere that was cold enough to support snow in my neck of the woods just a few miles south. It didn't, but it was enough to have the school system call at 5 a.m. this morning to say there was a 2-hour delay for the bus. By that time, it had pretty much melted and it's been raining ever since. So I didn't have to put the chains on the golf cart to make it to the bus stop. Today, we're working on an 88 and up style Turbo 400. Now, what's the big deal, right? A little bit of history. The square body pickup Chevrolet and GMC that everybody loves so much was made from 73 to 87. No one will argue that. In the CK variety. C is 2-wheel drive, K is 4-wheel drive. But in 1988 to 1991, you could still buy that truck. In the RV series, R was 2-wheel drive, V was 4-wheel drive. And in 1988, GM made a few changes to the case on the Turbo 400. I believe it was all about messing with trying to soften the engagement of reverse, which I never knew to be a big problem. Yeah, it's pretty harsh, I guess, but not a real problem. And it seems when they went down that road, they created problems because the 480E, which came right along behind this in 1992, she has a lot of parts, and they had a lot of problems with reverse engagement, at least initially. So what they did is, as a restrictor, if I can get this out of here for you, in the apply hole for the rear servo, I either drill it out or knock it out, depending on what you want to do. Not a problem, and I'm talking about modifying these for use in high performance use. So, but the big deal is right here south of this bolt hole location is now an area where a check ball would sit, where the old ones just had the passage with, there wouldn't be room to put a check ball in there, right south of that bolt, right there. And in every gasket set known to man now, they give you 3 valve body gaskets. 2 upper, this is the upper gasket, and the lower gasket is still the same in all models. So your valve body gasket, the one labeled VP, is always the same. But the upper gasket, you got to read the little instructions in 2 different languages to tell you that in the early transmissions, pre-1988, you use the one with the yellow stripe. And if you're going to use the stock separator plate, or put the stock valve body separator plate back on your 88 up transmission, you want to use the gasket without the yellow stripe. This is sounding confusing already, and it's not. Let's make it easy. In this case, I'm putting a manual valve body on this transmission. All I have to do is absolutely nothing. Take the early, if you will, pre-1988 valve body and separator plate and just bolt it on. I do pay some attention to the apply hole for the rear servo, but that has nothing to do with the valve body gaskets. And you just bolt it on and go. There's no concerns, nothing has to change. I answer this question at least twice a week. What can you do with an 88 and up style case? To 91, I think, is when they technically stopped putting them in vehicles, other than maybe the Hummer. But they still made service replacement transmissions for quite a while. So 88 and up had this change, and it's no big deal at all. It's almost clickbait for me putting on the thumbnail or the title of this video that it's a big deal, because it's not. Other changes to the transmission are more subtle. A lot of times they might have the round back direct drum. Most of the time they don't, but they might. It's always a possibility. You will encounter this style piston most of the time in the 88 and up style, and even in the 375s of the late 80s, It's still an aluminum piston. I think it's better than the steel one, but the apply area here is more like a steel piston, you know, pushing on the steel instead of being like the old style. It had a nice fat area to push, easily machined. You could also machine this if you needed to, but you'll find most of these, you're trying to take up space, and you can easily fit 6 clutches with this in here. In this case, I did, just trying to take up space. I wanted to do away with the wave, and through a combination of thick and thin steels, I put 6 and 6 because it was easier. So the other change, which is really only to the opinion, my opinion, is that the aluminum they use, that whatever mix they use of their molten aluminum to pour these cases, is really nice. It always cleans up really nice. The threads are usually really strong. I have removed a lot of broken bolts and stuff out of these in the past, and usually the thread survives. In this particular transmission case, it had 3 stripped out bolt holes, and they probably gave their all because each one was packed with silicone, and the fasteners were all, excuse me, all different lengths. I'm sure they were abused over the year. This transmission, a lot of things were put together backwards. It had been apart before. And to my surprise, this bolt right here was broken off in the valve body. Now, I cleaned the case, I stripped the case, cleaned it up, and decided I should try to remove this first. The pan bolts I would weld a nut on. I mean, it's hard to mess this up. I've had to weld on multiple nuts before to get the broken bolt out. And after about the 4th or 5th attempt, I believe I've softened it enough I can usually at least drill it out. But here I didn't want to mess up the valve body surface, so I carefully took a drill bit that was almost as large as the opening, just to make a point where I could prick punch it and start with a 1/8 drill bit. And this particular hole goes all the way down through, fortunately, this one and this one. So I was able to go, I nailed it right in the center, I went straight down through, and then I went slightly larger, and it grabbed a hold of it and actually threaded it down through. So I got lucky, and the threads are perfect. I was able to chase them all, which I do on all case prep. As you've seen me do, be careful of these two because you'll break off the area where the pump is. I've shared that mistake with you before. But I find these cases to be really hardy. And this one, if you notice back here, typically this is an open concave area. This is solid. So as Chevrolet cases goes, this is a really strong case. It has a heavy duty rib. It had the projections where it would have been drilled like an HD case. But all in all, good cases and nothing to be afraid of as far as, you know, using backdated parts. Just the only time you have to worry about the valve body gaskets is if you're using the 88 and up style separator plate. Hope I didn't complicate it. I also want to comment, getting off subject, of yesterday's video where I was behind the camera. Anytime I get behind the camera and talk, when I replay the video to myself, the audio sounds fine. When I upload it to YouTube, it goes up and down and up and down. So I apologize for, you know, any behind the camera audio problems. I don't know how to fix that. It's only with the current phone I'm using. It wasn't a problem in the past, and maybe it'll go away when I get a new phone. I made the decision a long time ago that it wouldn't take that much longer, and sometimes I would save time on assembly by using all new bolts. And I'm going to paint it anyway, so I paint the pieces individually. I think it looks better with the brand new bolts. It matters to me. Hopefully it matters to other people. Most transmissions, when you have them rebuilt, they come back just somewhat clean. All the old bolts back in. There's nothing wrong with that either. Sometimes they do an overall paint job. That's what we used to do. We put them on the shelf. But they were, you know, not beauty queens, and most of the time nobody cares. But I figure racing stuff, sometimes the stuff spends as much time out of the vehicle as in. So that's a decision I made. And it definitely takes time and coordination. and dealing with paint failures. I mean, there's not a lot of consistency with spray paint because my temperature changes today. I'm wearing a shirt, 2 sweatshirts, and a shirt because I haven't turned the heat on yet. It's 50 degrees in here, almost, and I'm happy. If I can just see my breath, it's working, rather. So, a lot of people ask me how long it takes to build a transmission. So this one I've been, keeping track. I don't charge by the hour, so hell, most of the time I'm trading for stuff. But I stripped this on Saturday. It took an hour. And today's Wednesday, almost at the end of my work day. So I've had, and both nights, Monday night and Tuesday night, I came out and worked till almost 10 o'clock. So I'm about 14 hours into this transmission. And I'm ready to put the valve body on. That's, all modifications. This is a pretty nice transmission. Built a la carte for somebody's specific needs. In this case, they wanted a forward pattern manual valve body with the front band. Now, I build those, but when I was ordering parts or making sure I had enough parts to build this transmission a few weeks ago, it was in the what do they call it, the pattern. It was going to get done when everybody else's was done, and calculating or weighing myself, spending a couple hours at least, because this transmission, the valve body that came out is full of mud. I have other ones I could have used or maybe clean it to start with, and then do all the modifications that you've seen me do and are available online. Go to the Crankshaft Coalition page. It walks you through a forward pattern manual valve body conversion, leaving the front band and the options you can use. I use that information and other information I was doing them before I ever read that, and it's sometimes interesting. Well, I made a decision first. Let's go there. I was ordering a bunch of front hubs and other stuff, and I went ahead and bought a valve body for this. I bought a TCI. It's a 1200. It's forward pattern, with the front band. And for the price, I was weighing whether it was worth it or not, because I get kind of spoiled when I do the beautiful ATD, Transmake valve bodies. They come out of the package and they're ready to go. So when I finally get 12, 14 hours in, all I got to do is take it out of the box and bolt it on. I wanted that same experience. I don't want to put another couple hours into this thing. I want it done. So I bought a valve body. First thing, and I don't have to show it to you. We've gone over the differences of the apply piston for the front band. They had 2 different styles. In 65 to 70, the piston in the valve body was flat. 70 and up, like all the ones you're going to find most of the time, have 3 little crowns on it. The TCI valve body, they gave me the early one. It's got a flat one in it with a note that says, if you need the other one, take your old one. Now, most of the time, your old one's plastic, and you want to put an aluminum piston in. So I'm now, and I'll show you my method of removing the piston and swapping it over. So no big deal, but despite the fact I spent, call it $200, I'm still working on the valve body. But it did have a new plug and, instructions. I was curious. This is what my point a second I was getting to. Check balls, you need a couple to make it work, unless you're buying a valve body and they tell you not to put them in. If you're modifying a stock valve body, you need the front one and the one in the bathtub. And those are the 2, 5 and 6, I believe they're called. And those are the 2 that I always put in when I'm doing my manual valve bodies, and I don't put any other ones in. This one, I've never put in a TCI manual valve body before that I can remember. And those are the 2 check balls they tell you to put in. So it was almost worth it to read somebody else's instructions and see that I'm doing what other people are doing. Because a lot of times I do my own thing without asking or looking for permission or guidance. Sometimes I go ahead and research it. What I do like about Jegs and Summit, Jegs is really good, is most of the products, the instructions are in the description. So without buying it, I could have just gone on and probably read the installation instructions and, got some knowledge that way. So if you got the time and you feel like it, It's not a bad way. Let me show you my valve body spring removal here, and I'll come back. Now I'm going to be behind the camera, and the audio might get messy. I will attempt to not raise my voice up and down. Sometimes that triggers it, but this is the TCI valve body with the flat style piston. That's the apply piston for the front band, and it's also an accumulator. This one, the accumulator spring is missing, so it'll only function to apply the front band. This is the 3-crowned piston that we need. Fortunately, this 88 and up style transmission has an aluminum one. So you don't have to clamp it to the bench, but I find it easier. You can just get it down, the spring compressed enough to get the clip out. Don't lose the clip, because you're going to need at least one to put this mess back together. I could have searched through all my junk to find the piece that will function with this, but I have the correct one for that piston, just awaiting a good cleaning and ready to go. So just faster and easier this way. Well, that's it for today. I'm going to finish this transmission and start on another one. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are, and I'll catch you in a couple days. Take her easy.